Hello and welcome to Tales from the Wandering Scribe. My name is Deanne, and usually we have our host, Gabriel Garcia, but today we're going to do the Wandering Scribe remix, where we will actually be going over Gabriel's work and his fascinating life. So then that way you get to know our wonderful Wandering Scribe and get a little bit more background from you, especially because he's my dear friend and I love him so, and I'm a huge fan and I want everyone to be a fan of his. So without further ado, we have Gabriel Garcia. He's more than just an indie author, though. He's a vibrant storyteller and passionate historian who weaves tales across the realms of fantasy, speculative fiction, historical fiction, and also science fiction. Growing up in sunny Southern California, which is absolutely beautiful, Gabriel's vivid imagination was ignited by his deep-seated love for history and the art of storytelling. Influenced by literary prowess of masters like Bernard Cornwell, Conn Iggulden, I hope I said that right, and Brian Jacques, he channels his creative spirit into crafting narratives that captivate and inspire all. His literary venture began with the release of his debut novel, The Gathering. This book was a labor of love, meticulously developed during his pursuit of a master's degree in history. That journey not only honed his writing skills, but also deepened his appreciation for the intricate historical backdrops that enrich all of his stories. This is also building on his foundation of his love of history. Gabriel has gone on to publish 2 more compelling books, each one exploring different facets of the human experience. And now he's hard at work on an exciting 4th novel that promises to be another enthralling addition to his body of work. But Gabriel's creativity doesn't stop with writing novels. No, he also hosts our podcast that we're on right now. But we're going to do the remix so you get to know him. Tales from the Wandering Scribe. It's available on YouTube. You can also follow on LinkedIn as well. So subscribe, and like. Here he connects with fellow writers and creatives, diving into meaningful conversations about their unique journeys and their stories as well. His podcast is more than just a platform for writers. It's an exploration of fascinating historical topics alongside historians and passionate hobbyists. And also, Gabriel invites listeners to embark on a thrilling journey through history's many layers, creating a dynamic space for anyone curious about the past. So come join us on his remarkable adventure and discover our amazing and wonderful Gabriel. Thank you for coming on the show.
Deanne, I have to say, before we begin, bravo. That was a beautiful, beautiful introduction. Yes, viewers and listeners, we are doing a reverse interview here on the show. You've seen me a lot of times as the interviewer. Now I am the interviewee.
Yay.
And being our interviewer for today is my good friend and fellow author, Deanne Dietz, who has the Tales of the Gathering series, Aeneas, Son of Persia, and now Decimus, the Wolf of Rome.
Yes, absolutely fabulous. I am so proud of you. Can I just say that? Like, you are so freaking fabulous. And I know I'm always a little positive Penny and stuff like that, but seriously, I am so proud of you. And I have to know, so yes, you have this amazing background. You have so much knowledge, so much insight, especially with your master's, but what inspired you to start writing from the beginning?
Absolutely. So that's a really good question. So I began initially back in elementary school. And for those who know the story, I had a really good teacher, Mrs. Trost. She was a very incredible person who instilled that spark of creativity. And that's where it kind of was for a few years or so, and kind of lay dormant. And then, of course, with the lockdown, that's when I found my passion for writing again. And it has been a nonstop ride ever since.
Oh, that's awesome. Have you ever been able to get back in touch with that instructor, that professor, and kind of show them like how much you've grown and everything you've done? Because I bet she'd be so proud of you.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. My mom actually used to work at the school a long time ago, so
Oh,
they are all in a friend group, and they always keep tabs on each other, reach out, talk, meet up. So every time a book of mine was released, my mom would always make sure to send it to her friends from her Estudio days. That was the name of the school. And they have always been super supportive and are just so amazed of how far I've come in my journey.
oh, that is so fabulous. I love that. Now, especially with developing your new book, how do you develop these new ideas and these new creations? What helps develop it in addition to spark your creativity?
Ooh, that is another good question. So, for all of my books, I've always been inspired by little things here and there. So, I'll give an example of my most recent book, which is Decimus, the Wolf of Rome. Now, for those who have read the previous work, The Gathering, Decimus was first introduced in that book. But when it came down to his own standalone book, I want to think of okay, what are some movies that I've enjoyed growing up? First one that comes to mind is Gladiator with Russell Crowe. And then the next work that comes to mind, and I actually have it right here, is The Last Legion by another author, favorite of mine, Valerio Manfredi, of Spartan and The Last Legion. And all these other works that Deanne mentioned in the introduction have always left an imprint on me. So I'm always finding things that I've enjoyed and adding my own spin to it. That balance of familiarity with authenticity.
I love that. And I love that, like, it's not just, a story in regards to tying in history and everything. Like, you really build onto the world where you take your readers into the actual story and you feel like you're right there, either in the perspective of your character or at least you are just within the world. And it's absolutely fascinating. Like, I love the way that you write. It's so descriptive and detailed. Now, do you have an actual writing routine or like a ritual?
Yes. So when I was writing Michael and Decimus, I had a very, very strict routine. I would write an hour a day, Monday through Sunday. And I did that for as long as it took. And there was a period where I couldn't do it anymore. And I realized, okay, I need to take a step back and I'm just going to write whenever I feel that I'm interested in. That worked for a good bit, but I didn't have that creative drive anymore. I needed some form of a schedule. So I realized, okay, I can't write an hour a day. I could, but I realized I wasn't at that point anymore. That would be too much of a burnout. And not to mention, I also like to write in the evening. I do occasionally write in the morning, but with work, I found myself to be a night owl because it's the most quiet time I can write. So whenever I get to my computer, I just put 20 minutes on my Apple Watch and I just write. And I found that to be more helpful than trying to actually write for an hour because I'll reach a point it's like I got nothing else left to write about. And so far, that has been the biggest help for me.
I love that. Now, do you ever get into like writer's block or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I have had my fair shares of writer's block. And funny enough, I'm going to use Decimus again. And I'll actually give an example. So, for those who don't know, Decimus was originally supposed to be the length of Amnetus. It was actually supposed to be that thin of a book. Amnetus is only about maybe almost close to 200 pages. Decimus, the version that Deanne has in front of you, that is the newest version. And when I was speaking with a very good friend of mine and other fellow author and Wandering Scribe alumni, Will Solomon. Shout out to him for this. We actually had a discussion, and he said the book is good, but it just goes way too fast. There has to be other stuff to fill in. And that's when I was like, oh, shoot. Well, what do I do? Because I had already written the outline chapter for chapter. I had to figure out, okay, what do I got to do? I was stuck for a while, and I had to think of, okay, what did I hint at in the original that I could build upon? Will actually mentioned, why not talk about the son? Showcase a little bit of Justinian's journey. Justinian is the son of Decimus. And from there, it opened up new avenues. So that was a learning experience, to say the least. But again, shout out to Will for that, because had he not been honest and told me about what Decimus could be, I guarantee you it would be a very, very different book.
That is awesome, though. And it's cool to be able to kind of figure out new ways and new pathways to kind of open up and make things a little bit more broader and defined as well. Now, other than writer's block, what's the most challenging part of writing a book for you?
Oof, that depends. So for me and my style of writing and background, I write historical fiction and fantasy. For historical fiction, what I found to be the most challenging is doing the research and presenting the authentic world as we know it, but adding my own story within it. That has always been a little bit of a challenge, especially with my newest works, which I have, which I will be mentioning later on in the interview. I don't want to give me too many spoilers, but they are both based in history. Now, when we go into fantasy, that's when we get into the nitty-gritty. And Deanne, I'm sure you can definitely agree that when writing fantasy, it's truly a blank canvas. Sometimes we'll have to create our own language or magic system. It's very intimidating because fantasy is a blank canvas, but you want to not, again, try to copy someone else. You want to show your own style of fantasy. And the book in question that really highlights that is, of course, Michael, Last Angel of Earth. When I was writing Michael, I was diving into fantasy completely blind. When I was initially writing that, I had not read a lot of fantasy books. So that was definitely a learning experience of how do I write a fantasy book that is familiar to readers, but yet significantly different. And somehow I kind of came up with the term angelic fantasy, which focuses on angels, demons, and whatnot. And just from there, it just proved to be a wonderful book that a lot of people enjoy. It's not as religious as a lot of people were kind of wary of, because it deals with angels and demons and a lot of religious teachings and messages. But they were intertwined into a fantasy novel about redemption, overcoming trauma, and making a being, a former angel, feel very human.
I love that. And it's such a good book. So for your books, speaking of your main characters, do you have a process, or is there a specific way? How did you develop your main characters?
Oh, each one had its own flavor. Each one has had its own specific aha. So for the Gathering cast, those are all characters from different media. So Amnetus is based off of the character Leonidas from 300 with Gerard Butler, the more comic book inspired. Decimus, of course, is based off of Russell Crowe's character Maximus from Gladiator. Symbol and Tira, those are based off of other characters from other works. And I pull a lot of stuff from other books, sometimes music, sometimes video games. And a very good example of this is actually Michael. And one of my good friends who was a beta reader read Michael and said, "You've just taken Samurai Jack from the fifth and final season and made him an angel." Now, for those who have not seen that show, I highly recommend watching Samurai Jack. It is one of the best shows. But for the last season that Genny Tarkovsky did for that show, Samurai Jack really goes through the ringer. He's dealing with trauma, suffering through it, and that character or that archetype character was exactly what I was looking for in Michael. A character who was a proud warrior, but something went wrong, and he's trying to reclaim his name and be the person that he once was, while also dealing with the internal demons that are plaguing him.
I love that. Now, even though we've touched upon, the gathering with Michael's book and then also Decimus's book, what inspired the themes for your books? Like, why specifically, you have these two historical time frames? What inspired you?
So those were mainly because I love reading historical fiction books, and I found myself reading a lot of books set in ancient Greece and ancient Rome. And some examples of that was, again, The Spartan by Valerio Manfredi, Empire of Dragons, also by Valerio Manfredi, Stephen Pressfield, Conn Iggulden. All those authors were able to write historical fiction, but they had themes in it of brotherhood, good versus evil. And I think in an industry where we're trying to add so many different flavors, so many different themes and tropes, I just wanted to write a really good classic story, good versus evil, a hero's journey, an odyssey. And Amnetis was really a test into that genre, specifically since it is a speculative alternative history that, while it is historical in the sense of what would have happened in that time period, it's still fiction in the sense that it did not happen. But even with that said, I wanted to talk about those themes of good versus evil, heroes overcoming trauma, and just making an engaging read that people can just sit down and immerse themselves in.
I love that. Now, while writing all of these intricate details, do you face like any unexpected challenges while you're writing your books, or anything where it's just like, all right, let me figure out how to get to this?
Yes, definitely. And that is, of course, either a scene change or a subplot change. And that usually comes from in the midst of writing. Sometimes I'm also reading. And I've talked with a lot of people who have said that sometimes they do not read books while they're writing because they don't want to take something from what they're reading and apply it to their book. That has happened to me a few times. But for me, I like to read, to just step away from writing, because another big challenge that I find myself is writing unnecessarily just to fill up a space. Because I have found some chapters to be shorter than others, but I've realized that not every chapter needs to be, 20 pages long. Sometimes a chapter can be 6 pages long, and that's okay. If it still gets the point across, then you've accomplished your goal. So that's something that I've always had to deal with and make sure that I don't write unnecessarily, because when that happens, I just have to just take out so much and just try to reorganize it.
Now, do you ever have some characters go off on their own adventure, and even though you are technically writing and typing, it is the character that has taken control of you?
Oh yes, absolutely. That has happened a few times, and oh my gosh. Again, going back to Decimus, there was a character that initially was not going to have a major role, but I found myself writing his story, and that, is, of course, is the character Tiberius in The Wolf of Rome. Tiberius, without giving too much away, is a soldier that serves under Decimus Aquila. They get separated, and years go by, and he becomes a side character in his own story. And a lot of people have said that while they've loved Decimus's story because he is a central character, Tiberius was also a very interesting character to follow, especially his relationship with Justinian, Decimus's son, who almost acts as like a second father or even a godfather to him. And I found myself really enjoying his story whenever I got a chance to weave him into the plot.
Isn't that crazy how you'll think it's going to start off this one way and then it just kind of branches out like a tree. And then you're like, whoa, this is not even what I thought it was going to be. But then it just beautifully grows into something more. And it's like you didn't even think your brain would be able to like make it into that. But it's cool how our minds can kind of work that through. Now, how do you weave different themes into your narratives?
I often think of what kind of story am I trying to write? Because themes are good, but after writing now, going to my 6th year, I really tend to think the story dictates the theme. And for Amnetus, for example, the theme of brotherhood, the theme of, good versus evil, and the Odyssey, that worked well for Amnetus. For Decimus, I wanted to be a very personal, not to say that Amnetus is not personal, it is. It is a very personal story because you follow his journey as a Spartan who becomes the bodyguard of the prince, and you see his interactions with so many characters. Decimus is a little bit different. It is, yes, about a brotherhood, but it's also about a lot of family dramas as well, family issues. Decimus, again, without revealing too much, is a single parent. How does he raise his son as best as he can while still maintaining that soldier mentality? And how does he deal with, the loss of his home, trying to overcome grief, sadness? Those are very personal, very deep, emotional themes that are really going to resonate with a lot of readers. Same thing with Michael. You have a character who was at one point a very majestic, godly figure in a way, but he became human because of his own actions. And I wanted to touch on the themes of, in that book, forgiveness of oneself, overcoming trauma, and the people we meet along the way help us on our journey. And I think a lot of people really found that comforting, because if an angel who caused great damage and harm is able to lose his name, be stripped to the bare bones, and still find a way to come back even stronger, what's a more powerful message or a better role model than that?
I love that. Now, you did mention kind of like taking the time to write for an hour or so. Now, do you outline your story or do you kind of write intuitively or both?
Outline for sure. I can't be a pantser. I've tried writing as a pantser. It has been helpful, but no, I like to be very, very, very outlined because it gives me an idea of how the story is supposed to go. Now, even with the outline, some scenes may change, relatively speaking, but they are going to tie back into the main story. But yeah, bottom line, I like to have an outline. I think I have maybe 5 or 6 outlines already planned for future stories. So yeah, I like to be very organized and detailed.
I love that. I am very bad. I'm a pantser. But in regards to like different techniques, how do you use different items to kind of heighten tension and suspense in your writing? What do you like to do?
That's a very good question, Deanne. And as I've worked on other writings on the side as like brain breaks, I've had to think of, okay, I am known for being very descriptive, but not everything needs to be descriptive. A big comment that a lot of people have given me, and rightly so, is I am very detailed when it comes to the characters' clothing and armor. I like to be very detailed from, their helmet, their armor, what it's made of, because I thought that was, the best way forward. But as I've revised my writing, I realized the techniques that we see in writing from all of our authors stem from the five senses: sight, taste, touch, smell, and hearing. So, for a particular scene, I really wanted to emphasize what's happening around the character. What are they listening to? What do they smell? And I really want to, again, take the readers into a immersive journey and experience that takes them away from reality, if just for a few moments. So going back to your question, Deanne, the techniques that I use in my writing, I try to be descriptive, but not for the characters themselves as much. Instead, I try to be descriptive where it's needed, like the lodging, the scenery, situations, noises. I really want to hit the nail on the head on those things.
I love that. What do you wish you knew before publishing your first book?
Probably the biggest one is marketing. I am not a business savvy person. When I originally published The Gathering on Barnes and Noble, I want to say 2023, I just thought, okay, the book's out. I'll let people know, like few posts here and there, and I'll get some reviews. I did not realize that it was a grind and a hassle to, get reviews. And I think with every book that I have done, I've tried to improve upon it. So for for Amnetus, I got beta readers. Really great experience, and I got some good reviews. For Michael, I went a step further. I had an ARC application. I got ARC readers. I did pre-orders, which I did not do for the other two. I just published them then and there. And I was able to make connections with those people who were my ARC readers, who were also the ARC readers for Decimus. And with Decimus, I also realized, okay, well, actually, going back to Michael, I realized that once Michael was published, I wanted to do other things. What can I get engagement? And that was, of course, around the time when I started talking with fellow narrators that I've met on Instagram. And from those interactions, and huge shout out to Sophia Dujardot, owner of Belval Studios and one of the co-founders of Audio Mazes. She was the first narrator that I worked with who made an incredible promo for Michael. And I still go back to it because it was such a great experience. And then, of course, Daphne Winters was the second narrator I worked with who brought it to life for a particular scene. And then when it came time to Decimus, I took every instance that I learned from that book and just heighten it. I got beta readers. I got ARC readers. I put my book up for pre-order. And then I worked with the narrators to have them read scenes and to post them, which a lot of people absolutely love. The engagement has been fascinating. And then, of course, collaborating with people on posts. Shout outs again to wonderful duo PR and, of course, the Whispered Ink, who made those incredible posts for Decimus and for my other works too. A lot of people have enjoyed seeing those and from those engagements. So If I had done that earlier with The Gathering, I think the engagement would have been a lot more prevalent, because people know me for Michael because I put a lot more work into Michael as opposed to my previous books.
Yeah, it's crazy all the little articulate details that you got to do after you write the book. That's not the only thing. It's almost like extra more stairs you got to kind of walk up. And then after a
Mhm.
while, you get used to it. But what was the most surprising part of the publishing process?
The most surprising part of the publishing process was definitely the freedom and availability. For many of those who may not know this or have not seen any of my previous interviews, I am an indie author through and through. I tried going the route of traditional and hybrid. It didn't work. And so I went the way of indie. And I found it to be so liberating and so freeing, because for me, I was able to decide when my book was finished, when my book was going to be published, and ultimately how I want to present my book. Because I think a lot of authors are definitely scared of that process of how are the publishing houses going to represent my book. Because I know I've heard a lot of stories from a lot of people of their books being mismarketed, and I did not want that for my books, because all of my books hold a very special place in my heart, and I wanted them to have the recognition they deserved.
Yes. And it's interesting too, like some authors I've talked to that have been indie, then they go publish for traditional, and they talk about like either the story will completely be changed, the cover will be completely different from what they originally like thought and dreamt of. So it's kind of interesting to see what that's like, because most of the times, I don't know about you, but I had thought it's, oh, you become traditional and then they still kind of, so, and depending on the company, obviously, I'm not going to act
Hmm.
like I know, but I kind of had a blanketed thought that you become with a traditional publisher and then they just go with your ideas. But that makes sense because they are, in the business. They know trends or this or that or whatever they know of the business. So they always go whatever that route is versus, like you said, with indie publishing, we have more control of our baby, so to speak.
Hmm.
We're able to kind of take care of it. Now, in regards to not just writing, what are your hobbies when you're not writing?
Absolutely. So, of course, number one is definitely reading. I love to read. I mean, I'm getting back into reading. I hadn't read for a very, very long time. I want to say last year I probably read a little bit more than I originally done, and now reading ebooks, which is really, really good. I found that to be, a little bit easier for me. And besides reading, I love to listen to music, and I also love to play video games. I'm a big open world video game player. My top favorite game of all time is the Assassin's Creed franchise. Absolutely love it. I love the history and the way they're able to take fantasy and combine it into it with a little bit of sci-fi now and then. And more recently, I've started playing and actually finished, I want to say last year, Red Dead Redemption 2, because that story was such a great story. Game wise itself, it was so fun to play, so very engaging, and like it blows my mind how that game is only like maybe I want to say few years old, and yet it is the most realistic game that has ever come out. And beyond that, I did used to draw a little bit. I did used to draw my characters in the past, but I've kind of taken a step back from writing as I found, drawing to be, it was my passion, but writing has become my new outlet for creativity.
I love that. And it's also like kind of in the forefront of your mind. Now, when
Mhm.
it comes to different types of your stories and then people are reading it, how do you handle criticism or any negative reviews? That's usually a tough one that we run into.
And you're absolutely right, Deanne. And thankfully, I have not had a lot of outright negative reviews. I've had very critical reviews, and that's okay because I'm sure you definitely agree, Deanne, that for us as authors, we are the target audience first and foremost. We know our story better than anyone else. But when we do publish them, we do have to realize that, okay, not every book's going to appeal to everyone, and that's completely fine. So the reviews for all of my books have been very, very positive. Some have been very critical, which I absolutely praise and I'm very thankful for. And thankfully, I have never gotten any negative review. But if I did get one down the road, I wouldn't sweat about it too much because I've already found my audience. I know the people who enjoy my work. And for me, that's all that matters.
True, very, very true. Now, when it comes to readers, what message do you hope that they'll take away from your stories?
That they were thoroughly entertained and they were hooked from beginning to end. That's what I want to leave with them. I know for us as authors, we are also readers, and we have read books where we were so invested, so engaged in the beginning, and then it just fall flat towards the end, or the ending wasn't as, satisfying. For all of my books, I want them to be satisfying for the readers and to learn something. If it's either from a character, the overall message from the book, or a theme that they found really compelling. At the end of the day, I just want to tell a good story that makes people happy.
I love that. Yeah, like they, and then that way too, they get like a little piece of you with that as well, and it goes a
Mhm.
long way. Now, in regards to your books, do you have a favorite scene or moment in your books that kind of sticks with you?
Oh gosh, that is such a tough question. That is really tough question. Now I know how you guys feel when I ask you guys that question. It's not easy. There are so many favorite scenes because we write these scenes at different points in our lives. It's really hard to choose a favorite scene. But if I had to choose a favorite scene out of all of my books, which is very, very difficult to choose from, I would definitely have to say it would be the scene, and spoilers for anyone who hasn't read the book or hasn't gotten to this point yet. There was a scene that I wrote with Amnetis and his love interest, Anahita. Now, for context for this, I don't read a lot of romance books or historical romance. So, writing a love scene, or as what we use the term now, a closed door romance scene, I've never done. But I didn't really take that into consideration as I was writing that scene. And when I was writing the dialogue for it, I was thinking into a headspace of, okay, you have the main character. He's been thought dead for 6 years. He's come back. The girl that has had a crush on him and has professed her love to him sees him. And it's a very tense moment because, again, they haven't seen each other in 6 years. And when I was writing that scene, I just kind of stopped thinking and going back to your previous question, Deanne, of letting the character take over. I just wrote. I just wrote and just had fun with it. And what I ended up writing was a very emotional, impactful scene that, funny enough, my good friend Sophia Dujardin actually read live on Instagram. I want to say back in December, And she messaged me when she finished recording saying, "Oh my gosh, and you told me you can't write romance." She nearly cried on camera because the scene was so emotional and so pure, because it was a very pure romance scene. Nothing graphic, nothing explicit, but just a really great scene between two people who are very much in love with each other and care deeply for one another. That she even said, "Okay, next book, you have to write a historical romance. No ifs, ands, or buts."
I love that. Oh my goodness. Now, what advice would you give to aspiring authors?
Oh, what advice would I give? There is so many. And I think in the plethora of advice that I have gotten from you and all the authors that have been featured on the show, the one advice that I would like to give fellow authors is this: don't be afraid to realize that just because your debut novel didn't reach the height you were expecting, that is not a reflection of yourself as an author. That is absolutely no fault on your own. Because again, for debut books, it's a 50-50 chance. Not every book is going to be an overnight success in the sense of being award winning, selling multiple copies, or what have you. And that is completely fine. Never see it as a sign of your self worth is lacking. And that's another thing I would like to add on to that too. Never tie your book's success or slight decline as part of your self-worth, because that is a very, very dangerous road to go down upon, because it leaves a lot on one's shoulders. It heightens our imposter syndrome. And a lot of people, which I'm sure you probably have known in your life, Deanne, who are fellow writers and authors, have maybe taken a step back from writing or have contemplated not writing altogether because their experiences with writing, whether marketing or trying to build a hype, wasn't reached. So ultimately, for all of the viewers and listeners, writers, authors, poets, screenplay writers, and what have you, just because something didn't reach the height you were expecting, it's no fault on your own and should not be added to your self-worth. We need to separate those because those are two very different things. And as authors, we get better as time goes on, because you will write that book. You will write that screenplay. You will write that poem that really gets your name out there and people know you for that. And when that day happens, you can then say, "Hey, if you've enjoyed this, check out the other works that I have published throughout my journey." And that's when you can look back on your success.
Yes. And also, too, your books will find who it is intended for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing. Like, it'll eventually be someone's favorite book, and that's the glory of it. And it's just kind of holding on to that, because sometimes, I've noticed some other author friends where they're like, I want to have, 200,000 pages read a month on KU. And granted, that's a great goal, but like sometimes being able to make more attainable goals, like even if
Mm-hmm.
it's 1,000 pages a month, like that gets my heart pitter pattering. Like, because then it's like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know. But also with that, are you working on anything? You got any new projects right now?
Yes, I actually have, if I can get these out, potentially 3 projects out, but potentially I know one for sure is coming out. So one project that I have already worked on, it's not fully edited yet. I'm still in the works doing that. Is of course my 5th book, which is a samurai epic, which is going to be a 3-book series called the Failed Quest Trilogy. And the first book is going to be officially titled The Wolves of Nobunaga, which, fun fact, when I was writing that book, that was going to be one book. The Failed Quest was going to be the original title. But I realized I have enough material to make one book because I don't know when I'm going to write the entire book in its completion. So book one is the first few chapters of what would have been a Lord of the Rings style epic. And my next project, which I am working on, is actually going to be called As One Story Begins, a duology anthology of short stories. Yes, you heard it right, viewers and listeners. I have a collection of short stories that I have written back in the past and ones more recently. And you're definitely going to be seeing my journey as an author. You'll definitely be seeing some original ideas of stories being transformed. It is quite a reflection, to say the least. And then my third project, fingers crossed, if I can get this one out, this is going to be truly a project that I am really happy for. And it is my first ever World War II true historical fiction epic, which the working title being called The Swords of the Philippines, which I don't want to spoil too much, but you will follow two main characters who are part of a unit that has been completely obscure in United States military history. And you see their story as they and their fellow brothers in arms hold off the Japanese as they invade the Philippines throughout the later half of 1941 after the bombing of Pearl, all the way up to April 1942, the fall of the Philippines.
Oh my gosh. That is crazy. Now, with all that, how do you research all these historical or cultural elements for your books, especially with all this range?
Absolutely. So I'll actually turn a page to my samurai epic, and I'll give you a little story behind that. So the samurai epic actually was an idea conceived back in high school. I wanted to write my first ever book, and I was, in a phase. I was in martial arts, and I wanted to write my own story. And I didn't know a lot about history at the time. I was an enthusiast, but I wasn't as engaged in studying history as I am now. And I just wrote it just for fun. And I will tell you, when the book does release, and I may release possible original chapters from back in the day, you're definitely going to see, oh, wow, it's like night and day. And then, of course, Swords of the Philippines, those actually stem from historical articles that I've written for magazines, which is another hobby I like to do. I like to write historical articles for independent magazines. And a lot of people have said from my articles that I should just write either a nonfiction book about the article or maybe a short story. So it's ultimately from, again, engagement. And if people like what I'm writing, then I'm going to do it. And from there, get more research. And I cannot tell you like how many books I have bought. You don't see it, viewers and listeners, but on a shelf to my right are books that I have collected since college. Some of these books are works of nonfiction and academic reference that were originally college course books, but I've enjoyed them so much, it's like I can't give them up. And those that aren't there, I have them on a flash drive. I think I have about maybe 50 in total on my flash drive. So going back to your question again, Deanne, regarding to like How do I do research? It's just if I'm in the zone and I'm very interested in learning more, then I am going to pursue it and I am going to learn more about it. And if there's a story to be told with history, there always is, I'm going to be the one to do it.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Now, when you are, you're writing your story, how do you know it's truly finished?
Oh, the age-old question. When a story is truly finished, for me, it has to be as like, have I told the story that I've wanted to tell? Have I reached the ending? Because I know as authors, we can always write more. But is that going to do a disservice to the original idea? Because what I could write, I could save for a potential sequel. So for Michael, for example, I actually realized the book is finished, but there needs something else. There needs to be a little teaser for what's to come. Because the way it leaves off is like, okay, it sets up a war, but there's, okay, then the epilogue. And not a lot of people read the epilogue. Some people view the epilogue as just unnecessary add-on, which I completely agree to some extent. So I wanted to leave an ending. And without spoiling too much, the ending that I rewrote for Michael is so much better because it sets up a new dynamic. And when that was finished, I was like, okay, now Michael's done. Now book one is finished because now I can work on other stuff as well.
Heck yeah. And then what types of things do you want your readers to take away from your work?
Ooh, what do I want readers to take away from my work? Strong characters, which includes male, female, everybody. Always try to write characters that are very empowering, that are, complex. I also want to take them on a journey again. I want my readers to get almost like a movie experience from my work, because a lot of people have always said that I'm a very cinematic writer when it comes to certain scenes. And those, of course, are battle scenes and fight scenes. I love going all out on those. So I want people to be thoroughly entertained. I want them to resonate with the characters. I want them to enjoy the villains. And if they hate the villains, I'm glad for that. I'm glad for that because I wrote a villain that readers absolutely hated, and that he wasn't a character that you what's the word I'm thinking of? That you do not sympathize. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You can have villains that can be sympathetic, but not every villain needs to be a sympathetic character. They can just be classic villains that you hate to the point that you are just chomping at the bit for the main character to just kill them.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's so true. It's so, so, so true. Do you have any like media inspiration? So other than the books, what other movies, TV that you kind of get some inspiration for your work?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So a lot of historical movies, Gladiator, Russell Crowe's Robin Hood, Last Legion with Colin Firth, Patriot, Last of the Mohicans, any historical drama that has come out within the last 30 or 40 years. A lot of Chinese films. I love watching Chinese films. A lot of Japanese films. Also gone around to watching some Korean dramas as well as some Bollywood dramas as well. So movies have always been a big inspiration for me. And then, of course, video games as well. TV shows. And another little fun fact that people may not know, The Gathering was created from an old show back in the day, which people may remember from Spike TV, and that is The Deadliest Warrior. Now, for those who remember The Deadliest Warrior, it was a show on Spike where experts, doctors, weapons specialists, and now, well, at the time, season 3 came out, academics and historians would look at, okay, between a Spartan and a ninja, who is the better fighter? And from watching, I was like, oh, okay, I like this. Oh, what if there was like a battle royale between characters? What if I did that? And then from there, I was like, oh, what if these characters were all together? What if they were all taking on an alien world? And I'll give you another little behind the scenes. The Gathering was actually supposed to have a lot more characters. They were supposed to have originally, let's see, you have the Spartan, the Roman, the Celt, the Viking, the Knight, the Samurai, the Mohawk warrior, the British soldier from the Battle of Islandwalda, a World War I trooper, a German sniper from Stalingrad, and of course, an American Marine from 2004. So originally, The Gathering was going to have 10 characters from different battles in human history. But when I was drafting that out, I was like, let's save the modern and pre-modern characters for another book. And I mainly focus on the ancient and medieval heroes coming together. And a lot of people have enjoyed that. So we will be seeing that again, which may also lead to another book in the Tales of the Gathering series, which will focus on everyone's favorite murderous Celt symbol. I don't want to give too many details away, but that story is in the works. It will be coming up most likely in the next 2 years or so. So that is a definitive possibility.
Oh, I love that. That's going to be so exciting. Now, other than Amazon and Barnes & Noble, where else can we find your books?
So at the moment, right now, it's just those two. Amazon is more recent. They are up on Goodreads where people can go from there. I do want to say this right now, viewers and listeners, is that people have mentioned it is difficult to find my books on the interwebs only because, as many of you may not know, my name is Gabriel Garcia. That is not my an author pen name. That is my actual name. And unfortunately, I do share the name with famed author Gabriel Garcia Marquez, the famous poet. And it's been a hassle to try to separate because every time I publish my book, it goes to Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It's been a nightmare to try to separate. So, to make it easy, if you want to buy on Barnes & Noble, go to my website, the wanderingscribe.com. Go to currently published, and you will find the links to all of my works on Barnes & Noble. That is probably the easiest thing to do. If you don't want to go to Barnes & Noble, then Goodreads to Amazon is a surefire place to go. And in fact, on Amazon, I will just say this: a lot of authors have issues with Amazon. I'm definitely one of them. You'll probably see my posts and support for a lot of things that authors are not happy with about Amazon, but I digress. Amazon has helped me generate more sales than ever before. So right now, it's just those two platforms that you can find my works on.
Wonderful. And then with that, what are some of your social media profiles so readers can follow you? And you'll make sure to post them in the bottom, correct? In the comments, or not comments, the summary section?
Absolutely. So I am on Instagram, which I'll link down below. I am available on Blue Sky. I'm also available on LinkedIn as well. That's also where I have my newsletter, The Wandering Scribe. And again, I'm also on Goodreads. You can follow me on there because I do post some book blogs and book reviews every now and then. And I believe that is everything. I'm not on a lot of social media platforms. I am not a social media person. I know that's kind of a conundrum as an author. You would think I would be on every social media platform, TikTok, X, Facebook. I am not social media savvy. I don't want to have too many things. Oh, and also, I am also an author with Audio Mazes, the first ever audio drama company. And I don't want to give away too much, but be on the lookout for some amazing projects coming out soon. And you can find me there as well. So those are my platforms, which I will link down below in the summary of this video.
Fabulous. Now, are you going to be doing any events this year that we could find you at?
Oh, yes, absolutely. 2026 is going to be my year of doing a lot of in-person events. So, for those who may not know this, I've been keeping this under wraps until I've gone public, but I think it's no better time than now. I am going to be at this year's LA Festival of Books on Saturday, which will be April 18th. I will be tabling for the whole day. So if you want to meet me in person, that is where I will be. And I'll be posting content up to that point so you can find me, as well as the other authors I will be tabling with. And also, potentially, I'll be at Anacon, which is going to be at the Anaheim Public Library in May, as well as Fall Into Book Fest, which will going to be, if I'm not mistaken, it's either September or October or November. It's one of those months. I'll be also there. And of course, Indie Author Day, which will also be at the Anaheim Library. So those are just the few public appearances that I will be making, but those will not be the last. So if you want to find me there, make sure to follow me on my social media to stay up to date with releases and more.
And like and subscribe to the Wandering Scribe, please, so you can find more indie authors and see all the amazing interviews that you've done. You've done what, over 100?
213 author interviews.
That is incredible. That is so incredible. And
Mhm.
I can't thank you enough for letting me hijack your show and getting to interview you, because we want to get to know our amazing Gabriel and everything that you have accomplished, because not only are you an amazing author, you're an amazing friend. And I want more of the universe to have your energy, because you are so fabulous.
Well, thank you, Deanne. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you enjoyed this remix author interview here on the show, viewers and listeners. Thank you again so much for your love and support. And I want to give a huge thank you to Deanne again for taking the interviewer chair for a change. She did an amazing job. And if you like this video and would like to see a little bit more, like, comment, subscribe, and share on all social media platforms. And until next time, everybody, this has been the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill, signing out. Wish you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. We'll see you all next time. Have a wonderful day.